Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony and responses, and thank you for what you're doing for the country. We appreciate the job you're doing. I'd like to, first of all, flesh out this watch list issue a little bit. As I understand it, being put on the watch list once you're in the United States really doesn't have much effect. Am I correct?
That is correct. The tip-off watch list is visas and ports of entry. It's a border function,
Right.
not an
and even if you
internal
leave the
function.
country, there probably isn't any process to check at that point that would have picked up these folks.
Not upon departure, no. Upon
And that
re-entry.
hasn't changed. That's still the same today as it was September 11th.
Well, I believe there are some revisions that are in works now through the Immigration Service for certain individuals who will be required to check upon with the Immigration Service upon departure from the United States.
I don't know if any of you would know this, but if somebody was put on the watch list, obviously at that time it wasn't made available to the airlines, local police, because some of these guys got stopped for speeding. Has any of that changed? Has this watch list information, is it now being made available to the airlines, to local law enforcement, so that they're alerted if somebody tries to somebody's in the United States and they're traveling around and we know they're bad guys, there's some way within the country that we can pick them up and they don't have to either be coming in or going out?
To the best of my knowledge, just from an investigative standpoint, without going too much into detail to give away, there are some watch lists that are out there that are being used to try to do what you're talking about. I don't know how macro in concept it is, or how interoperative it is with other watch lists, but there are things like that that are being utilized. And then I would defer to my colleague from the FBI that might know more about those
Chris
types of
Kojim
things.
apparently wants to.
Yes, 2 points to make. We do provide the unclassified data elements from tip-off to the Foreign Terrorism Tracking Task Force. That's an interagency group. INS and FBI are playing key leadership roles in that task force. We do provide that information to them. In addition, we have provided now on a real-time basis through an Intel link, a top-secret SCI connection, to 5 sister intelligence community elements, real-time information on everything that is in our database, and that does include the FBI.
Well, I want to get into a little bit into this whole issue of assembling this data and maybe focusing on what we're doing with databases and technology. But, you know, finally in the summer of 2001, our witnesses from the CIA and FBI took action to kind of pull all this stuff together. And once all the available intelligence was gathered together, their reaction is interesting and important. When they see all the data together, they realize that these 2 guys are connected to the embassy in Malaysia, or connected to the embassy bombings through a UBL facility in Yemen, organize and attend a terrorist meeting in Malaysia, are connected with the planner of the Cole bombings, and have extended visas to the United States and entered the United States after Malaysia meeting. They realize at this point that these 2 guys are dangerous and must be found. It's at this point that the 2 suspects are placed on a watch list and the FBI is asked to search for them in the United States. The obvious point is that a CIA officer and FBI analyst pre-9/11 see the threat of the situation exactly as we do today post 9/11. Their actions prove that. If only the CIA's data management system had permitted everyone to see all the data available, analysts and managers probably could have perceived the need for action on al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi long before 9/11. So our focus today on this matter is not, my focus is not a case of hindsight so much as trying to look at where we're going and whether we're making some progress. And to kind of set the stage, I'd like to ask the CIA officer how hard it is or was to find and assemble intelligence data on al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi. Is that an easy process, or
To reconstruct the file is not that difficult an issue if one has the time and the people to do it. The question, I mean, this is a difficult one to say just the right way, but I'm going to give it a shot because it's important. There was a miss in January. There was a miss in March. We've acknowledged that. What happened after that was, I think, in part, a function, stuff like that should normally emerge during the course of a file review if something provokes the file review. Once that file review is provoked, the information is readily recoverable. That's how I found what I found when I found it, kind of thing. But the story kind of emerged in dribs and drabs because there was no one person who reconstructed the whole file.
Right, and there were different people that saw this stuff
right.
at different times, but it took, well, quite a while before everybody pulled this together.
Right.
And I guess, so your current system, it seemed that, to me that you've got a system that sounds like it's antiquated. It's still filed on a flat basis and it's not necessarily collated together. There are now technology where you can build a data file where anybody looks at it, all of this stuff is going to come up. And if you would have had something like that, somebody that wasn't even experienced, that all of a sudden something went off in the back of their mind that triggered this, would see this because everything would pop up. Are we moving in that direction? Is there going to be better technology put in place both in the CIA and the FBI to try to make sure something like this doesn't happen again in the future?
I'm not actually qualified to answer the technology question. I'm sorry. I think other speakers.
But you work
of
with
later
it
sessions
now.
will.
Has anything changed from 9/11?
I actually have no complaints about CTC's data system right now.
But you have to know how to go in there and what to look for, and you have to actually be looking for something in order to.
And you have to have a little bit of time to do it.
Right.
And you have to have a reason to do that instead of something else. Right.
Right.
But the information is there.
It's
there. Recoverable.
Right. And it was there all for 18 months prior to 9/11.
Right.
And it took somebody who happened to remember something who just, finally put this together on August 23rd that seems to me didn't give us enough time by 9/11 to track these guys down. If this all would have come together earlier, we might have been able to track them down. And I guess my question is, why don't we have a system where this guy's name is in there and everything that comes in on this guy gets put into that file, and so whoever accesses that name, it pops up and it shows all this stuff in one place, so you don't have to be a rocket scientist or you don't have to have been following this stuff to understand that when you see all this, that this is a big problem.
As I said, someone else will need to answer that question.
How about the FBI?
I'm in total agreement. And it dawned on me over the years as we went from no relationship with the CIA to what I consider to be one that I would brag about and do brag about anywhere, anytime. But the exchange of personnel, which has done as much as it has, only gets us so far. The information exchange, I think, is the next piece. The Bureau's technological woes are out there. Our efforts to correct that are certainly well known to all. What I would personally like to see is an ability for analysts to exchange information and be able to get on that system within the operations center, within the Bin Laden unit at headquarters, and access information that's available to their agency analytical counterparts. I'd like to be able to email my counterpart at the Department of Justice. There are a lot of things I'd like to be able to do. I think all of them are technologically practical. It's a matter of, I think, putting the time and the energy and the money and the smart people in the right direction, and I believe we're doing that.
Is that going on now?
It's moving in that direction. I don't know how long it's going to take us to get there.
But as of today, it's not too far from where it was on 9/11, apparently. As somebody who uses the system, it's not much different. Is that what you're saying?
As someone who uses the system, yeah. I would agree. But in terms of the progress being made,
probably
you have to talk
some people
to somebody
working on this, trying to improve it.
Yes, sir.
Sir, if I may, in my experience, just since September 11th, there's a technological barrier, but there's also still gatekeepers with regards to certain information, and I'm not naive enough to think that the FBI should be privy to every ounce of information that is out there. But I try to think of it in simplest forms, and that first day at Quantico or second day, CIA handles world intelligence, the U.S. handles domestic intelligence. In today's for lack of a better term, global village community, we got to make sure that that domestic intelligence and world intelligence is transparent, both physically, technologically, and also in mindsets of certain individuals. So I don't think it's just a technological solution.
No, I understand what you're saying, and there probably would be some resistance, but I know enough about these databases and computers to know that this system could be put together, and it could be shared by all of you. And you know, we've been doing this for years, and you know, you're not the only folks in government that have this problem. USDA has this problem, all kinds of other people, and I don't know how we fix it. But
if I could, just one more thing. The Director Mueller, I'm speaking now in my FBI hat, not in my CIA hat, has said several times that has basically described the objectives that he's taking the FBI toward, and I think it's critical to note that part of that objective is to transform the way the FBI handles its information. That part of its information that other agencies would define as intelligence. Intelligence is often collected as a byproduct of investigation, and unless it's bottled and capped and distributed, it may not be used. So a challenge this director has taken on and is moving the FBI toward is doing that with the FBI's own intelligence, and that's a critical piece of the bilateral flow, because there's no reluctance. Wall issues aside, there's no real reluctance on the part of counterterrorism professionals on either side to talk to each other about issues of common concern. Oftentimes what you have, though, is this giant anvil of information going through the Cheerio of one person. And we got to change that part of it in the computer system. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's something computers could be a huge help to get you sorted through, I think. Right. You know, are you, I don't know if anybody asked it, but are you considering making some of this information available to airlines, or, you know, is it now, Mr. Rollins, or is that stuff on these bad guys, is that somehow or another transmitted to the airlines so they have some kind of a system that they pop up when they try to buy a ticket?
I'm aware that that possibility has been discussed. How do you run the names of tens or hundreds of thousands of travelers, be they international or domestic, against the available databases, be it a watch list or your files on whom you have information that might be of interest to them, and making a determination as to whether a person does or doesn't get on? I know it's being talked about, sir. I'm not sure exactly where it is in terms of actually happening. I shouldn't speak for Homeland Security, but I know that process is going on, and that there are review and coordination processes do go on so that the airlines do get critical information, and they're improving that as they go.
As I talked about before, you know, we had all this information out there, and until somebody, you know, kind of remembered something and pulled all this stuff together, we didn't really realize what these guys, how bad these guys were and the threat they were. I guess my question is, you know, how many other people like al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi are in the system? That's what concerns a lot of us. Maybe you can't answer that, but you know,
Congressman,
are there other folks in there, and is there any way that we can get at them?
That's an issue that does preoccupy us quite a lot, and we're, as I said, we're doing the best we can to do that through a variety of different means. I think the thing that also bothers us a great deal is that the other 16 were completely invisible. So there's a dual challenge there as well.
Congressman, if I could jump in for a second, I was passed some information that goes to the heart of your question. Apparently the TSA, the newly formed agency, maintains two lists: a no-fly list, which would be analogous to our armed and dangerous warning, as well as a select D list of people that we have an interest in and we may wish to detain for questioning. And we do have the ability to contribute both names and information into both of those lists.
Mr. Kojim, you were acting like you wanted to say something.
Yes, Congressman. You had asked about how many names there are in the system. We have 80,000. We're adding approximately 2,000 names each month. In answer to Congressman Burr's question earlier, between the Cole bombing and September 11th, we added about 4,000 names. And as the staff report identified, since September 11th, our work is up about 450%. So there are a lot of names out there. We add them as best we can. We try to add them every day. We don't meet that standard. We want to. In relationship to the FAA, we do work with them, and they provide data that we put in our database, and we do respond to their telephone requests for name checks through diplomatic security. So we're in contact with them, but we would certainly concur with your observation that we need to have closer, better electronic contacts with FAA and other domestic agencies, and we are working with that with the Homeland Security people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rollins, could you clarify for me how these cases are designated, either criminal or investigation or intelligence investigation? Mihdhar and al-Hazmi in 2001 are known to be connected with people involved in the Cole and the embassy bombings, which would appear to make them proper objects of a criminal investigation as potential material witnesses, but the headquarters was adamant that a criminal investigation was not warranted. Can you explain why? Was it simply because all the data we had on Mihdhar and al-Hazmi at the time was from intelligence sources, or what was going on there?
That is the core element of the decision-making process, that the relevant information that came forward was in fact all in an intelligence channel. And the meeting that these individuals attended, we did not have reporting on in terms of exactly what was said or transcripts of what was said. So although we certainly suspect, and rightfully so, that they were probably engaged in past and future acts, criminal acts, the information brought to us came essentially and in total in the intelligence channel. So an intelligence investigation was opened. You don't always have to have a parallel criminal investigation, and both criminal and intel are monitored, are regulated by the Attorney General guidelines. I think what's important is, do you have the ability to check every record, every source, DMV, local police, NCIC, past warrants, banks, neighborhoods, etc., within an intelligence investigation, which mirrors what you can do in a criminal investigation? And the answer is yes, you do.
So I just I get a better sense. So does that have a big part of the decision about how this gets structured, where this comes from? I mean, is that what you're saying? The intelligence, if it comes out of intelligence, then that's likely to push it to an intelligence.
It's likely, but if there is a logical reason or specific articulable facts out there that would also indicate participation in a criminal enterprise, then you would open a parallel criminal investigation.
If I may, sir, one point on that, because I was part of the conversation that took place with regards to opening a criminal or intelligence matter. Not only do these things restrict us on what we can do today, but the possibilities of what might happen in the future also restrict us. And the example that was given to me that day on the telephone was, if we try to go criminally and we do not find this individual, if in the future we try to go intel, a FISA court judge will say, hey, you struck out criminally, that's why you're coming to me intel-wise. So not only do we have to take a snapshot of what we look now when we make these decisions, but management is trying to project ahead. Let's say we subpoena everything and nothing is in there. We can't find this individual, but we find him one day and we want to then open an intel investigation. We're prevented from doing it because then the judge is going to say, oh, you struck out criminally, that's why you're coming back intel-wise. So that's just another thing that was used.
Well, unfortunately, I've heard that story before in some other situations. For you again, Mr. You wrote an email that predicted people would die and the public would not understand why every resource was not thrown at certain problems. What decisions would the National Security Law Division make today given the same circumstances? In other words, have things changed over there?
I can't speculate. I know the walls have come down with regards to FISA information and the snowball effect that occurred after that, where the wall used to be between criminal investigators and intel investigators. It's back where I personally believe it should be, which is between prosecutors and the FBI. In addition to that, with regards to FISA information and the direction of those FISAs with criminal investigators. So I have seen firsthand that that wall has come down, and it's been a big help. And that happened immediately following. And my recommendations from an agent's perspective, field agent's perspective, would be make sure those walls never go up again with regards to sharing information between at least different elements of a intel investigation and a criminal investigation.